everybody. My name is Sue and I am a scrap quilter in Southeast Pennsylvania, and this is From Small Things. This week I want to share with everybody that Pam and I went to a local exhibit of quilts at the Schwenkfelder Library and Heritage Center, and all of the quilts that were there, there weren't a lot. There were about 14, 15 quilts there. They were all from one maker. She was a local quilter here, and her name was Evelyn Moosher, and she just passed away in March. And so she was a prolific quilter. So the little sign that they had said that this was just a very small sample of the amount of quilts that she has made in her quilting career. And so we went to see it, and it was really great. She was a really, really great quilter. The little bio that they put up of her too said that she also taught children how to sew, and she also did a lot of sewing for an organization called, I have it here, some little notes, Quilts for Kids. And most of those quilts were for children who were going through some sort of illness or trauma. And so she worked with them for years. And her quilts had a lot of applique, along with piecing. The quilts mostly were applique and piecing, and a lot of embroidery. She also did a lot of hand embroidery on the quilts, which was really, really fine detail. It looked to me like she only used one strand of an embroidery floss or thread to do her embroidery, because there was a lot of detail in those quilts. So we took some video of that, and I hope you enjoy seeing them. It was a wonderful selection of quilts. So these are the quilts of Evelyn Moosher that Pam and I went to see. This first one is a lovely Dresden plate quilt with some applique surrounding each of the Dresden plates. Some of her quilts were heavily machine quilted, and some of them were hand quilted. It looks like she did a little bit of everything. She knew every technique. This one was I don't know what the name of this block was, but it was the same block, and each block had a different applique shape in the center of it. This is a nice neutral quilt, and it looks like the blocks were put together in a sort of puzzle fashion, with kind of making things fit. And she, I really believe she hand embroidered all of this on there. None of the quilts had any sort of description next to them. But I was looking really closely at this, and so was Pam, and we really think that this was all hand embroidered. This one was really, really something special. It looks like she has a computerized machine, and she put a lot of extra detail on this. There's a lot of machine work on this. Machine embroidery, a lot of satin stitching around the edges to really make things pop and stand out. This one was so interesting to look at. This was a variation on the Drunkard's Path. Most of the blocks were Drunkard Paths, and the larger motifs in the center of them were just a single white square. But again, she hand embroidered these. Very interesting outside edge also. There's no binding on it. This is just a small little wall hanging. Some really nice details in this. It's so cute. Here's another one where she did a fantastic amount of hand embroidery. Some of these blocks had so many French knots. So much detail in this. This was a lot of fun to look at. This is like a landscape meadow view. This one had a little bit of everything. Look closely, there are some buttons in the center of those little flowers. This one you can see here is all hand quilted. Here's another one that is a sampler style quilt, and all of the sashings between the blocks here were also made of different pieced blocks, and this one was also all hand quilted. There were a lot of hours in these quilts. This one was really bright, and the block is basically a like a Jacob's ladder, like just one block, like just lights and darks. This was one of my favorites because I do like small piecing. So this is a 9 patch on point, and the centers or the alternate blocks in there were all hand embroidered. It was hard to choose our favorites because there were so many that you could tell were just so labor intensive. She really had a good use of color, and just the style and the motifs just were, you know, she didn't pick the easy things to do. They were really nice. When we looked at all of her work all together, at least the works that were here in this exhibit, this one stood out a little bit because of the coloration. And we think maybe it's possible that she made it for a family member who went to our local high school whose colors were blue and yellow. And here's another sampler style. Just a lot of different techniques were used on this quilt. So this past week I have been very busy, but I don't have a lot to show because I've really been focusing hard on just 2 projects that I'm working on, and I will share them with you. I'll show you my progress on them. But first I also wanted to show that this box here, which I shared in the last episode, that was from my friend Anita. I took all of the reds out of there and I washed all of these because, you know, reds, it's always a mystery. Will they bleed? Will they not? So I washed all these. I actually didn't put them in the washing machine. I let them soak for about 2 days, and not one little ounce of dye came out of any of these. So I feel pretty good about them. But the two on the bottom here, especially this one, it still feels like a little stiff. And that's for the time that this fabric came out. It seems pretty common for that kind of fabric. A lot of the fabrics at that point had that weird stiffness to it. And this one's not as bad, but the others are fine. And this is a little interesting thing that was in this stack of reds. Somebody started making something, I don't know what. And it's funny because the sides are open, but just on this side, just on the outside. It's like the side of the legs is still open. So, I don't know. It's funny. It's a funny shape. And up here, whoever made this too, there's a lot of bunching and pleating up here. Something did not go as planned. I don't think that was intentional. But then this side too, there's part of the seam is finished here, but then the rest of this is open. So it doesn't matter. I will cut this all up, and this will all find a new home in quilts. So let me share with you now the two main projects that I've been working on this week. I've been working on hand quilting this one, and it's been going slower than a lot of my other quilts, and that's fine. I'm never in a hurry to finish anything. I don't have any deadlines. I just have this internal timing from doing this for so long that I can just feel it's going at a slower pace. And that's why I say slower. I mean, I'm still making pretty good progress on it. And I did really get pretty far on it this week. So I've had a number of questions come up over several videos, things about my approach to hand quilting and whether I mark my quilts or not. So I kind of want to go over some of that with this. I'll kind of show you my thinking of this about how I approach things here. I see a little loose thread that got caught in the seam, so I'll trim that up. First of all, you can see my basting threads are hanging out here, and when I get to a square that I want to work on here, I'm going to pull out these basting threads just so that this square now is clear of the basting threads. And I've started doing this more frequently over the years because I find when I'm gonna lose my thread again. Sorry. I find when I do my hand quilting, if there's even a slight possibility of my needle piercing through that basting thread, it will. I don't know how I manage to do that so often. And then when I go to pull these out, it doesn't want to pull out because now I've actually sewn that thread into place. So now I'm more likely to pull it out just in the very area that I'm working with. I will leave this here in this square until I get to this one. And so you can see that's why I have these little tails here, because I've already taken them out of all of these other squares that I've already done. And it's kind of nice too, because that way at the end of the quilt, when I'm finished with the quilting, I know all the threads have been removed. And sometimes in the past where I wait until the very end and then take them out, like I said, if I pull on one of these and it gets stuck because it's actually quilted in, sometimes when I pull on it, the basting thread will just break. And I might have like a tiny bit of basting thread then left on the top of the quilt that I don't always see or, or notice. I have found quilts that I've gotten out after it's been washed and on the bed a couple of times. And then like maybe the third or fourth time, or maybe somebody else will notice there's like just a little piece of colored thread left over. So that's how I'm starting to approach this now. It's not going to just fall out on its own on the sections that I have it left in. It's going to stay in place, so everything is still basted around this. And everything that I've hand quilted too is also holding these layers tight where it's not going to shift at all. And one more thing that I do when I work on a quilt that's this big, when I'm in the center of the quilt, it's like you're in the center of an island and you cannot see the path out to the outer edge when you only have this much in front of you. And sometimes, believe it or not, it gets hard for me to remember which way to move my frame because everything around it, especially when I start out, still needs to be quilted. And because every single square is the same, it can get confusing, believe it or not. You know, when you look at the quilt when it's laying on the floor from above, it's super easy to see which way you have to move. But when this is the only part you see and you're in an ocean of quilt, it can get disorienting which way to move. So this is what I do now too. I just finished quilting these 4. I still have to do these sashing strips, but I will move my pin. I have a pin and I will move it to the next square that I need to quilt. And that way I know which direction to move my frame. And it's just a simple little way to mark which way I need to go. Now I'm getting close to the outer edge here. So I really don't need that pin at this point. From here on out, it's easy for me to see where to move my frame. So I don't really need it. But when I move to the other side, I'll kind of try and show you how far I am here. And this is another question I get a lot too. Where do I start quilting? And here you can see where I started. I started in the middle of the quilt, but I will do the whole row from the top of the quilt to the bottom of the quilt. And then I will move over one more row and do that from the top to the bottom. And I usually also, for myself, now this, for example, has 8 rows in. And I'll show you what one block looks like so you can see what I'm talking about. The way I assembled this quilt, this is what I am calling one block. And there are 8 of these across and 8 of these down. So there are 64 of these all together in the quilt. So I could have started on row number, well, there are 8. So I could, even if I started on row 4, it still is the center of the quilt. So basically I started on row 5 and then I worked 4, 3, 2, 1. And then that way, when I pick up again to work over on this side, I only have 3 rows to do. And I do that because when I get this much quilting done, and I know I still have more to do, it isn't as daunting to me now to only do 3 rows instead of now doing 4 rows all over again. So it's just a little mental game that I play with myself. It's like, I know I don't have as many to go now on this side, so I'm doing a little bit more than half every time that I start like that. Now I know also you can start in the middle of the quilt and then sort of work out in a concentric way to get to the outside, but I don't do that. I like to go in a very orderly way so that I can keep track of everything and not miss anything. So I'll show you how I quilt each square. So to start with, I have all my basics nearby. I have my thimble, I have my scissors, I have my thread conditioner, I have my spool of thread with my needles. Right now I only have 3 on here because, as you can see over here, I've already used a lot of them. So I will wait until I use all of them and then thread them again. And then I've been using my little homemade little pin cushion full of needles too. When I work on this, I will pull a thread, just one needle, and I usually pull it for about as long as I can. Cut it, and then I just put a double knot in it, run it through the conditioner, and then pop it in here. And I usually put about 7 or 8 in here that are ready to go, so that I sort of keep up my momentum. It's so easy just to grab another one, keep going, grab another one, keep going. I don't usually do more because I haven't ever had a problem with them tangling. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I did have one problem. It wasn't my fault. Ollie knocked this on the floor. Ollie is my cat. He has a very long bushy tail, and if he sees something out of the window, this is usually sitting near the window, his tail just goes back and forth like crazy. And he knocked this on the floor one time, and these did get tangled that one time. But I personally have not done anything to create tangles in them, even if I have about 7 or 8 needles in there at a time. Okay, so now to start with this, I try and think of a way to quilt without having to tie like a lot of knots. I try to do as much as I can with this length of thread. So on this one, I can do this square here. This actually length of thread will only do about 3 of these squares, so I will run out of thread. But I'll show you how I think about it to do it continuously, so that I don't have to just do one square at a time and then tie a knot. I can do it continuously, so theoretically I could start anywhere on here that I wanted to, but I choose to start in the middle and then always come back to the middle. So I've brought my thread up here, and I'm going to bring it up right here in the corner. And I know I don't quilt the way that most people quilt, but this is the only way I know how to quilt. So I actually look at each of these more as a square than I do as a half square triangle. And with this frame, it's easy for me to turn this too. Now I can quilt towards me. And now when I get to the diagonal, I'm going to go down one side and then back up the other. So I'm basically always coming back to where I started. And that's why you can kind of look at this as a square. You know, you can go around the whole outside, and this is just a little diversion. You're just going right down and then right back up. And then you're going to finish the square. And because all of my half square triangles in this quilt have been ironed to the dark side, I know that right here on the light side, I'm not going to be in a seam. So this side always goes easier. And then I'll push my needle through the layers, not to the back of the quilt, just through the layers to get up on this side. And then I will go up this knot. Now this side does have the seam in it, so I don't do as close to the edge on this side. Once you've been quilting for a while, you know when you're in a seam. You can feel it. And some seams, you know, and if your fabric really, if it's even a little bit more dense or heavy, it makes a huge difference when it comes to the time when you have to quilt through a seam. So now I've gone up and across and I did the diagonal. Now I can finish the square. I'll come down. And I'll go over. And now on this side here, the blue part here has a seam underneath it. Now this white part here does not. And because I spin my seams, this side is going to have a seam underneath, but now this side on the blue will not. This white over here is where the seam is. So this will finish one of the squares, and then I usually just continue straight across. Again, I'll just take my needle very close to where the thread comes up, but I will go between the layers and I will come up here. And I'm not concerned about coming up right at this seam allowance, because you can see how my stitches stay a little bit away from the seam. So now I can just continue on to the very next one, straight across. And now I'm at a diagonal again. So now I'm going to go up and come down, come right back to where I started, and then finish this square. And then I'll be coming down here, and I can just continue down there, and so on. And so that's how I do one of these squares, continuous quilting, without having to mark anything. Once these squares are all done, there are 4 squares in a block. Then I will go back and I put some quilting in these small sashing strips, and then just 2 of those larger ones, just like this block here. You can see this block only has 2 sashing strips on, so that's what I will quilt. And then I move on and do it again. And the only time I have to quilt more than these 2 is when I get to the very outer edges. Then I will have another one to quilt. So I hope this helped you look at how to think about your quilting paths, so that you can do it in a continuous way. And every quilt is different. The second project that's been taking a lot of my time this week, I've really been focusing on getting a lot of work done on this, and I've been having a lot of fun doing this too, is I'm making a replica of this brown quilt. But this time I'm using a lot of men's shirts. And last video, when this one was hanging on the door too, I got a lot of questions about where can I get the pattern, and what pattern did I use. I don't typically work with patterns. I usually start with a block, and then I kind of play with things and see what happens. And the idea for this quilt came from a quilt that my sister made. She took one block and she made, and I forget the exact size of her squares, but let's just say like started with a 3-inch square, and then she made some that were twice as big, 6-inch squares, and then she made some more squares twice as big as that, so 12-inch squares. And so everything she did, the math just works that they're all going to fit together, and you can lay it out however you want, like a puzzle. Now I did mine a little bit differently. Instead of making mine always double, I started with 6-inch squares, and I started with the foundation of using an Ohio Star block. So I started with 6-inch, and that would have meant I would have had to go to then a 12-inch and then a 24-inch, and that I thought was too big. So I did a 6-inch. Also, I didn't want to start with a 3-inch because I thought that was way too small to be making all of these quarter square triangles. So I did 6, and then I did 9, and then I did 12. And so that meant that things were going to fit together relatively well, but I was still going to have some open spaces at some point when I started to try and fit everything together. And so I just filled it in with leftover strips that I had when I was cutting. And some of them were literally just strips of fabric. Now this is going to be a 3-inch strip here, finish at 3 inches. And some of them I did, like I just had a big quarter square triangle left. So it's basically leftovers that I had from cutting. And I'll show you how I assembled this quilt here, because it really looks random, but it wasn't. I mean, it kind of was, but it kind of wasn't also. I'll show you what one block looks like. I'll put some strips here so maybe you can see here. So I did this whole quilt by making 18-inch blocks. And so it gave me a lot of room to play, because these are 2 9-inch blocks. And so I'm getting the 18 inches that I need this way. And then I threw in a couple of 6-inch blocks here, but then they each needed to be bordered in order to bring it up to another 9-inch unit that was going to connect with this. And then I'll show you the next one over there. And each block, each 18-inch block is going to look a little bit different. As long as I could get 18 inches, I knew I was going to be able to connect everything together. This one is way over here. And on this one, I started with a big 12-inch block here. And I didn't need any spacers in this one because this was 12 inches and then these were all 6 inches. So here's a 6, a 6, a 6, a 6, and a 6 here. So that filled in that whole block without needing any kind of fillers in there. And I don't have as many of the big blocks. Of course, you're always going to have more of the small ones, because you can see for one 12-inch block, there are 5 of the smaller blocks here just to fill out this one block. So basically I just started playing like that, and I just started laying things out until I got to the size of quilt that I normally make. So now that I have this quilt made, this one was finished last year actually too. I'm actually going to go by this same layout because I like it and it works for me. And I actually like that there are some empty spots in here. It gives your eye a place to rest, because I think it can get a little busy. And you can see right here, well, not that one, but these 2 here are filler pieces also, with another one down here. Here's another piece that's a filler piece here. So when I'm finished, cutting, I'm always going to have something left over. So I just set those aside until I lay things out. And so these are some of the blocks that I've made so far. I've been very busy with these. I made all of the little ones that I need. I counted in this quilt how many I need. So I have all of the little ones made, and they're super darling. They're so cute. And I tried to get a good mix of backgrounds with some light and some dark and some with patterns and some with solids. So those are some of the 6 inches. Here are a few more. And some of them are a little bit more subtle. But you can see like how different even they look just based on color placement. Because now like this one, I used white in the quarter square triangles and put a white in here. So now it looks like one big square here that's set on point. So not all of them have an accent piece in the middle like this. And this one, for the quarter square triangles, I kept all of those the same as the background color. And this is not the same as the background color. This is an accent piece here, but I used the the same as these. I call these the parts that kiss. When I'm laying out all of my pieces to decide how I want to use them in the block, I think, which ones do I want to kiss? And then use the accent pieces. The other thing that I've been paying attention to is, because they're shirtings, I'm working with a lot of prints that have stripes. And so I'm trying to make sure all of my stripes in the block go in the same direction. And when you're making triangles, you're always going to get a set of one where the stripes go one way and one where the stripes go the other way. But when you rotate them to put them in the block, it works out. You just have to be aware of that and look when you lay them out. And there's another one with stripes. And this one too, I think, is cute. So I'm really excited to put these together. And these are some of my 12-inch blocks. These are the last size that I've made. I have all the 9 inches made. I have maybe just a few more of these made. There aren't a lot of 12-inch blocks in this quilt. So these I don't even have pressed yet. I just made these. So this has taken me a lot of time this week, but I'm almost there. I'm almost at the point where I can start laying them out and making 18-inch blocks on this. This is the basket that I started working from. It was stuffed pretty full and there's a lot more room in here now. When I get these out to cut from them at this point in the quilt, I know I don't have very many more blocks to make. So now when I get them out, I'm cutting some pieces that are 10.5 inches, and I'm going to make a backing for this quilt so that I can put as many of these shirts into this quilt as possible. So that's the point I'm at now with this one. I've really enjoyed working with these. This fabric here too, this is a linen fabric and it's so nice and drapey. I imagine this was really nice to wear as a shirt. But this one I ended up starching very heavily because when you cut it and work with it, it's very wobbly. It's hard to keep these edges really, really straight. It really wants to move. But this one, I think there were 2 more in here that I had to really starch in order to be able to work with them. But other than that, everything's going very smooth, and I'm excited to be at the point where I can start playing with the layouts very, very soon. So hopefully next week I'll have, I don't know if I'll have a quilt top. I hope so. We'll see. But I'll have something more to share along those lines. So anyway, those are my 2 big projects this week that I've really put a lot of hours in and a lot of time in, and I've made some good progress on both of them. So I'm really happy to see those projects moving forward as quickly as they are. So I hope everybody else is busy in their sewing room too and getting a lot done. I know in the month of September, Pam and I are looking forward to some more upcoming quilty sorts of events, some fabric sales and other quilt shows. I don't know how many of those we'll get to, but I will share the ones that we go to. So until next time, happy quilting, everybody. Bye.